Well, hello, and welcome back. We are, yes, again going to be working with some new methods within the actual DOM object. They are going to be the query selector and the query selector all. In the previous videos, we've been working with the get element by ID, get element by tag name, and get element by class name. Now we're going to work with using just the query selector and query selector all, in which we can actually then query a number of different elements using the same type of syntax you would use when dealing with your CSS. So let's go on ahead and get started, and we'll give you a chance to go on ahead and open up your favorite text editor. I will see you right over at the actual code screen. See you in a bit. Alright, so let's go on ahead. Give yourself a moment to open up your favorite text editor. Again, I'm using Visual Studio Code, and you can use any text editor that you would like. It's really more of a matter of preference. So what I'm going to do, since we were actually working with the same files from the previous, I believe, two or three videos already, we're going to go on ahead and use the same videos, or actually the same actual files, but the actual JavaScript file itself is going to be slightly different. So let's see here. So what you see on the screen, I got the TV shows. All right, perfect. We're going to need the markup really for that though. So let me just paste in the same markup that we had. So first let's create the actual files. And that's going to be, what do we name them? Oh, query selector. So query selector and query selector all.html. Yeah, super long. You can name it anything you'd like. You can name it index if you'd like. I'm just naming it, just so it's easier to just kind of keep track of the work that you do. All right, so I copied that. Let's create two more files. So .css and the .js file. I'm just pasting the name in there. All right, we will open that up with query selector, with live server. Okay, and what else do we need to do here? Let's go on ahead and, yes, let's get our bare bones markup here, and then I'll show you what I'm actually pasting in. It's basically a small amount of HTML that we had from the previous three videos. Excuse me, they're all within the actual body. And let's just refresh that, make sure that that's working all right. Good. I do have some styles to actually paste in as well, because those styles are the same. So let's paste that into our style sheet. And this was the HTML over here. Okay, pause the screen on that. And for the actual CSS, you can pause the screen on that. And I'll scroll down. So actually, yeah, that's pretty much it to the end of the line. We don't need anything else. So you can actually pause the screen right there. Now let's link the actual files, connect them to the HTML page so we can actually use the console and make sure everything else is working as well. So we're going to do link and then tab and then enter in the name of the file or the location. So that's the CSS file. So now we do need to actually add in our JavaScript file as well. So let's do that. So that was script, and let's put in the actual source or as to where the location is, and not all of that. Where are we here? It looks like it disappeared here. But let me just copy this line so I don't have to retype it and go back and put script. And put the actual source, add JS to the end, and defer that for any actual HTML to actually load before we actually work with, before any of the actual JavaScript takes effect. All right, so that is good. Hit a quick little refresh and make sure live server is working, make some changes. All right, perfect. So that did make a change. All right, so now that we got that, let's put our JavaScript down here. I'll split this down, and okay, make sure we can see our actual markup. Great. And now, as far as actually selecting using the querySelectorAll, again, we've seen the actual get element by ID. We've seen the get elements by tag name and get elements by class name. And again, these are just all different ways to actually select DOM elements in which we are going to try to manipulate the DOM. And that is a huge part in web development, is actually trying to figure out what you're working with, selecting different types of elements and tags, and then doing some type of manipulation and action. So in this case, what we're going to do is let's create a variable, and we'll call it element. Okay, and in that for that actual variable, we're going to capture the entire element node. So in order to do that, we need to use the document object, and the method that we're using today is the querySelector. Okay, and now what we're going to do is, looking at the markup that I have above, I want to select any list items that actually have the class name of warm. So I would do that just as I would in my CSS. I can actually say, let's see here, li.warm, and that would be it. Okay, now I'm going to open up the inspector tool over here. Take a look. Oh, and that's my cat in the background meowing, so let me let her out. 1 second. There we go. Jump on out. Okay, well, the cats stop for no one. If they want to get out, they are going to let you know. So now we're back at the actual console. I can actually type in, let's see, element, and let's see what I actually get. Okay, so I only have one thing selected, one element selected. And the reason for that is, even though we have two class names, or actually one class name, but split between this list item here and this list item here. Okay, so I only get one result here. And the reason for that is because querySelector only actually retrieves the first match. All right, now after this, of course, we can simply say element, just like we did before in the previous video, dot class name, okay, equals cool. All right, and cool is just a actual class name that we actually created within our style sheet. Okay, so that is over here. All right, so remember, we down at the bottom we have the class cool. Okay, so we're saying add that class to that particular list item. Okay, but so that's just querySelector. Let's actually move on to querySelectorAll, okay, and then we're going to see exactly what we actually get with that. So let's comment this out here, and let's actually use the querySelectorAll. So let, instead of element, I'm going to say elements. Okay, and we're going to use the document object and the actual querySelectorAll method, and we're going to select any LIs with the actual, why am I up here? Well, it's the same thing down here. All right, let me just close that out. Okay, down here at the bottom, I just wanted to make sure that you could still see the markup up above. So okay, so we got the document.querySelectorAll, and I am going to select all li items that are all li elements with a class of warm. Okay, and now what I can do in the actual console is type in elements. Okay, and let's see, what do we get within our node list here? We get, oh, look at that, 3 items. And if we look at our actual HTML, you can see we have 3 list items with the class of warm. We look in the console in this node list, because it's the node list that's actually returned. So what are we getting here? We are getting list item 2, 3, and 4. All right, so that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. But now, in the previous videos, we've only been able to apply a class name to only 1 or 2, or actually just one of the actual elements by using the node list index. okay, by using the actual index array. So you can think of that node list as an actual array that's returned, and we've only been actually picking and choosing the actual index value that we want. So in this case now, in the previous videos, we did actually learn how to do the for loop. So let's go on ahead and iterate through our array or our node list and actually add the actual class name to all of the list items that actually have a class of warm. Okay, so we're going to do for, and this is and if the for loop looks a little crazy, it's because well, one, you can go back a few videos and look at the actual for loops, and two, let's just dig right into it. So let I equal 0. Okay, so that's going to be our initialization. Okay, and while I is less than the elements dot length, okay. Okay, so in element.length, if I just comment this out and show you in the console, element, that is just going to be the length of the actual node list. Okay, and you see up there, you'll see 3. All right, so we'll go back, uncomment this. So let I equal to 0, that's our initialization. And while I is less than the elements.length, which turns out to be 3, then we're going to increment our counter here, which is I, and we're going to increment that by 1. Then what we're going to do is cycle through, okay, because each time this for loop is ran, okay, each time it's implemented, what we're going to do is go through each index. And since I continues to be incremented by 1, it's always going to say, all right, it's going to say 0 because it's going to go through, okay, what is I going through here? I is going to be 0 at first. All right. Then from there, it's going to go right back up to the beginning of the loop, and it's going to be incremented, and then I is going to be 1, and then it's going to go right back up and say, wait a minute, is I less than elements.length? Okay, when it gets incremented all the way up to 2, it's still going to be less than 3. So it's going to go through that loop again. All right, so this right here is how we're going to iterate through the entire node list. So now we can add a class name. All right, remember in our markup, we do not have a class name of cool there at all. But now we're going to iterate through every index value of the node list and add the actual value of cool, or the actual class name of cool. And would you look at that to the left up in the browser, you can see that all 3 list items with the class name of warm now have a class name of cool. And if we go to the actual elements and look at the DOM structure and into the UL, there we go. There we have it. We have the actual class name of cool added there. Okay, so that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. That's exactly what we want. All right, so, and let me just double check here too, because I don't see the actual class name of warm. So let me just see if I can add a space there and put warm, see what happens on that. Let me just go through here just to test it, into the structure, into the DOM. And okay, perfect. So, because one thing I was noticing is that the actual class name warm disappeared. So we just wanted to make sure that was still there by actually doing cool and warm, because you never know, you might be affecting something else in which you still need that class name of warm still on there. So that's perfect. That's one way to actually iterate through the actual DOM tree, through the actual element nodes, using the attributes, using the querySelectorAll and querySelector. So what I urge you, and I strongly suggest you do, is to practice this. Okay, don't just do a one and done. You watch this, you can open your books, but you definitely have to practice this. Practice coming up with some different type of HTML and actually practicing going through and seeing what type of results you actually get and getting some actual errors and just playing around with this. JavaScript language it's a huge language. There's so many ins and outs to it. You can easily get caught up in just like falling through the cracks and saying, well, what do I study? What do I do? But trust me on this, the more you actually practice with this utility, all right, or adding different types of methods and properties and practicing, the better you're going to get. So even if you have a book or you're doing a tutorial or a video, once you finish the book, don't stop there. Do the book again, because I guarantee you something that you didn't actually get earlier, you're going to get it the second time. And if you don't get it the second time, you'll get it the third time. But in the meantime, continue. Watch the videos on my channel, watch other videos on other channels, and get a number of different books. Yes, the boot camps are great, but you still have to be able to practice this stuff so you can, you don't have to so much know everything by heart in your head. As long as you can, know where you can reference the material and put the Lego pieces together in order to make some type of application or finish the actual task. But you do have to be able to say, oh, wait a minute, I understand this and I understand that, and I can read through the code with no problem, and I'm not stuck on anything. And in order to get to that, level, you have to continue to practice. Just like with any sport, think of this field as a sport. Before you were working on your right-handed layups, you had to make sure you got your footing right, your speed right, your timing right. Or are you going to do, an actual finger roll at the end of the hoop, or were you going to go up against the backboard to make that layup? Different types of jump shots and fadeaways. So you're practicing your craft here. Okay. Yeah, definitely a little TED talk there, but I'm just kind of speaking from experience. Continue to practice exactly what you are learning so you can figure out why things are working and other different ways that you can figure out the same exact issue to a particular task. All right, that is it for me today. Definitely subscribe to the channel. Definitely helps our team here. Hit the notification so you can actually get the actual alerts as to when new material has actually been released. And yeah, that's it. If you're stuck on something, give me an email. Don't be scared. You can just email me or leave a comment and I will respond right back to you. Okay. All right. Full stack out.